This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for our first session in Greater Indiana's Fuel Your Day Transportation Discussion Series. Carrie Garvin, our director, is currently doing her civic duty and is serving jury duty. So unfortunately, she cannot join us today, but she will be back soon. So instead, I will be stepping in for her today. My name is Kaylee May. I'm the Events and Communications Coordinator for Greater Indiana Clean Cities. Today, I will give you an overview of Greater Indiana, and then pass it off to Frank Maly, who is the Director of Commercial Vehicle Transportation Analysis and Research for ACT Research, and he will give us his insights into the changes in emission standards. Following Frank's introduction to the topic, we will open up for discussion. During the presentation portion of the session, all participants will be muted and all webcams should be off. Following Frank's presentation, we will open up for discussion and encourage all participants to turn on their webcam. And at that time, then attendees should unmute to ask questions and engage in discussion. However, when you're not speaking, please mute yourself to prevent any background noises from interrupting the conversation. Please also utilize the chat box to engage in additional conversations with other attendees. So Greater Indiana is a clean city coalition focused on advancing communities with education and resources on alternative fuel vehicles. Our mission is to advance alternative domestic fuel transportation, including energy efficient technologies across all sectors in Indiana. We are a standalone nonprofit 501c3 organization serving the state with public and private sector members. As the first DOE designated clean city coalition serving the state, we have grown in both size and service in response to our stakeholders. For 21 years, we have been assisting multiple stakeholders and partners such as cities, schools, utilities, fueling companies, government agencies, universities, and other nonprofits with their alternative fuel transportation projects. Greater Indiana has around 80 members or stakeholders that work with us on collaborative opportunities, whether it is for funding opportunities, infrastructure development, or fleet deployment. Together, we host educational and networking events, fostering opportunities for partnerships between fleets and industry providers. As you can see, we have several of our champion members listed today. We also have many leader and advocate stakeholders listed on our website. Their membership has helped fund our work to deploy alternative fuels and technologies throughout the state. Together, we're fueling the future of a Greater Indiana. Clean Cities focuses on 4 major activities represented by the nodes of this web as part of a complementary framework. Local and national partnerships. Clean Cities helps convene key community and business leaders to develop and implement projects, leverage resources, and address local barriers through the program's coalitions. In addition, national partnerships leverage Clean Cities resources nationwide to engage with larger fleets and organizations. Information and education. Clean Cities develops data-driven tools to help consumers save money on fuel costs and help fleets understand their options for cost-effective alternatives. Technical and problem-solving assistance. Clean Cities help local leaders address permitting and safety issues, technology shortfalls, and other project implementation barriers. Competitively awarded financial assistance. Clean Cities use federal awards to provide funds that encourage an initial private sector match and long-term investment. This framework is bolstered by local support through designated Clean Cities coalitions like ours that have their finger on the pulse of local market conditions and priorities. Local coalitions such as Greater Indiana can tap national resources to provide unbiased information, tools, experts to address barriers and solve problems, national partnerships with industry and large national fleets, publicity through mass media and outreach, and financial assistance to jumpstart markets and incentivize private investment. Today's session is the first in a 3-part series Greater Indiana is organizing in partnership with ACT Research. ACT Research is a Greater Indiana member and is recognized as the leading publisher of commercial vehicle industry data, market analysis, and forecasting services for the North American market. We will now hear from Frank Maly, Director of Commercial Vehicle Transportation Analysis and Research for ACT Research.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to be able to join you today. I join you from Northern Michigan. I've been with ACT for 11 years and have worked remotely, so the work from home situation right now is not a new thing to me. This has been my standard here for quite some time. We do regular as we move to the next slide. We do regular webinars with our clients, and since the onset of COVID, we've included a slide at the beginning of our presentations that talks about the impact that's had with the number of fatalities. However, today's a little different. It is a 9/11. We really would like to just take a moment to think about what happened 19 years ago and the impact that it's had on our lives and our society, and hopefully we've all learned that life can change in a heartbeat. So as we move to the next slide with a quick overview of ACT. ACT has been around since the late 80s. We publish multiple reports on an ongoing basis to our client base. That's an international base. We have many speaking engagements such as this one that I've got the opportunity to do 2 seminars a year. Those we just did our 63rd. Those are normally face-to-face seminars. The one we did last month was our first virtual seminar, and we did quite well. But our client base, if it touches a commercial vehicle by way of being a manufacturer, a component supplier, a user as a fleet, financing and the banking, if it touches a commercial vehicle, we've got a client in the business in that category. So we and I personally have been on both the client side and now internally at ACT as well, as I was involved in the commercial vehicle trailer market as well as components with Meritor down in Troy, Michigan. So if we slide on to the next, if we go to the next slide, we can see that there are a couple of reports that we do that actually have just both been published here very recently on a quarterly basis. The change in the market, alternative fuels quarterly, used to be called the natural gas quarterly. Things have changed. Yes, there's still opportunities for natural gas, but things really do seem to be shifting over toward the electric side of the market. And then we also have the North America on-highway engine outlook, which is a report that we do in cooperation with Ryan and Associates down in Metro Detroit. So one thing that you may want to take a look at, and these are subscription-based reports. It's not like you could go to our website and pull those down unless you want to become a subscriber. And I know that some of the members of the group here are subscribers, but we do have some things there that are available to for anyone to come by and look at. And one is this calculator. If we go to the next slide, and I know that it's a little bit of an eye chart, but this is a calculator that is a fill in the blank process, and this one is specifically for school buses. And if you take a look at the upper left-hand corner, you have your choice of defining what kind of fuel type your school bus is going to use: diesel, natural gas, propane, gasoline, electric. Over on the right side, how many miles are you going to drive? And this is kind of a total cost of ownership and cost per mile per year calculator that fill in the blank and compare the various opportunities and the various fuel types. And given the group here that we've got online, I thought that this was something that would be very potentially valuable. We are about ready to put up a similar version of this for heavier duty trucks, but that one's not up on the website yet, but this one is, and it's available. The previous slide did have that URL, and it's there for your review and use if you so desire. So let's talk about, on the next slide, let's talk about regulations in the commercial vehicle industry. Obviously, our major concern here is, in this discussion is environmental, but the commercial vehicle industry is surprisingly regulated. Not only the environmental situation issues with FATES, federal and local, but operational regulations from licensing and operating standards, lots of safety standards, lots of driver standards, hours of service. How long can a driver stay in service as they're operating a vehicle? Are they capable? They're not. There's no issues with drug or alcohol. Annual testing and a national database is up for drivers, so a driver can't fail a test at one fleet and then walk down the street and go work at another fleet because they because they failed the drug and alcohol test from a safety standpoint. And then certainly size and weight concerns. On the next slide, I show again a little bit of an eye chart, but this is how on a monthly basis we provide what we call the regulatory pipeline to our clients that looks at all the regulations that are kind of in the middle. And we update this monthly. It publishes with our North American Outlook, which we happen to just publish yesterday. It publishes on the 10th of every month. So this would look at, what are the overall federal regulations, in general, could be taxes, could be other things. What are emissions oriented, safety, drivers, and then some things from various states. And as you would probably understand and appreciate, a lot of the state information is California driven. And then we also address changes in Canada and Mexico, which normally tend to be very in line with the types of things that are going on in the United States. It just makes things more simple from a cross-border freight standpoint, because obviously in the old NAFTA, which is now the USMCA, international trade, it just helps to have those types of things in line. And right now, from a traffic standpoint, cross-border traffic, you and I probably would have great difficulty getting into Canada. However, a commercial vehicle the commercial freight is moving cross-border, both Canada and Mexico, but personal travel is not. So let's talk about regulations on from a commercial vehicle standpoint. The next slide, it's a bit of a tug of war. You've got and I show two groups of organizations, governments and environmental advocates and regulatory agencies, and then we've got the manufacturers and the dealers and the fleets, and those groups can change sides one to the other depending on what is actually being discussed. But if you think about the regulation situation from an engine standpoint, it makes a whole lot more sense to have things in a organized national base than having something that's potentially a one state solution. It makes it very difficult for fleets to operate that way. And if we take a look on the next slide at some of the longer term impact of regulations in the commercial vehicle space, all the environmental regulations regarding engines really started back in the late 90s. And we ran through various standards of 98, EPA 04, 7, 10. We've now got GHG, greenhouse gas 1 and 2. And those things have generated changes on many changes on the vehicle, some good, some bad. We've had issues in the past when some of these regulations went in and actually reduced the mileage of the vehicles. Reduce their reliability, lots of issues with parts breaking down. And if you think about it from a fleet standpoint, they have a job to do. They need to get the freight from point A to point B on a particular schedule, and it becomes very difficult for them if they cannot count on the vehicle to operate correctly and continually. the one good thing is we've now gotten to the point, this latest level of regulations, we actually have obviously much cleaner engines, but we also now have much more efficient engines. And if you think about the environmental impact, if you can get better miles per gallon of whatever fuel you're using, and it's operating cleaner along the way, it's a win-win for everybody. So now we have more recently, California has had has taken some very serious steps in zero emission vehicle requirements for the state, and also some lower NOx requirements for the state. And I'll touch on those in a second. Uh, on the national side, we've got the EPA, who came out with they're looking to modify and implement a clean truck initiative. And they earlier this year they had the ANPR, an advanced notice of proposed rulemaking. So they were looking for commentary. That happened early in the first quarter. They had a commentary period open. That period closed. I believe it was a 60-day comment period, and we haven't heard anything back from them yet. But while California is going down one path, the EPA is also trying to go down a path to improve things as we go forward. Let's talk about CARB in the next slide. In June, CARB came out with some very hard, very solid zero emission vehicle mandates. And then in August, they came out with some heavy duty omnibus regulations, which address NOx emissions. And I kind of look at this as a pincer move. The zero emission vehicle mandates address more electric vehicles. The omnibus regulations address the internal combustion engines that would remain in the market, but put some very tough projections for minimal GHG as we move forward. And if you think about it from an OEM standpoint, that puts them in a very difficult position. Where do they put their developmental dollars, their research and development? Do they do it on the electric vehicle side, or they do it on the internal combustion side? And it's a situation where the whole commercial vehicle market, one solution does not fit all. Electric propulsion may fit in some areas, some segments very well, and the technology is just not there for some others. Think about home deliveries, so vehicles that are a return to home type of process as they operate during the day. The Amazons of the world, the postal services, food delivery. They can be completely charged as an electric vehicle, run their route, come back and recharge at night. Long haul over the road trucking, not really applicable at this point. We've got the Nikolas and the Teslas who are attempting to get into that space in different ways. One looking to do hydrogen fuel cell, which would charge the batteries. The other looking to have bigger batteries that would be charged, and that then begets, you have to have a charging network, and that network just doesn't really exist yet. When these regulations are out there, you have to watch out for the law of unintended consequences. There's always the best intentions can generate mistakes, and my example is the cobra effect. I don't like snakes. When I hear something about cobras, it tends to stick in my mind. Years ago in India, they had a cobra problem, and they were a British protectorate, and they put in regulations that would give a bounty on turning in dead cobras. Well, the bounty was so good that it started to work the population down. What happened? People started breeding cobras so they could then turn them in for the bounty. And when the government found out about that, they ended up cutting off the bounty, at which point everybody that was breeding cobras set the cobras free. And they, again, had a cobra problem. So it's the weird, kind of an unusual example of the law of unintended consequences. And that has to be kept in mind when the regulations go into effect. So on the next slide, we show what California did from a ZEV standpoint in June. They had standards by year starting in 2024 for their advanced clean truck standards by vehicle class, which is the weight classifications. And they had standards set and then revised them and basically doubled them through 2030 in many cases. So this is the path that California wants to go down, to have ZEV, for example, in 2030, 30% of the Class 7A tractors that are going to be sold in California are supposed to be ZEV vehicles. While that standard or path has been set, on the next slide in August, they came through with heavy-duty omnibus regulation, which lowers the NOx and the particle emissions across that same time frame. So, not going into the detail of all these words, the next slide shows how they will, what their path is on the right side here for going from the NOx changes in 2020, 2024, and 2027. So think about this from a fleet standpoint or a manufacturing standpoint. It becomes a challenge. Where do you put your dollars? How are you going to make the investment on the electric side or on the internal combustion engine side to try to reach these types of goals? And with a lot of the changes here that they're proposing within the state of the NOx regulations, these are fairly similar to the types of things that EPA is talking about. Only EPA is talking about starting this more in a 2027 timeframe. So it's not that this is a completely new standard. It's something that's being pulled forward. California is trying to push the issue, and again, from a law of unintended consequences, these are vehicles to be sold in California. What happens if these standards have difficulty being met? Maybe California fleets go buy vehicles outside the state and bring them in. This is not an in-use, this is a sales situation. And while you may not be aware of it, there were regulations on the trailer side from a fuel efficiency standpoint. That's happening on the federal side as well, but in California, they set standards to have regulations. The regulations would have called for lower, light weighting the trailers, more aerodynamics on the trailers, low rolling resistance tires, and these are all things that are proven to be effective where they're applicable. Think about California with their situation of running through, crawling down I-5 in California. Your aerodynamics are not going to be a positive. So you have to remember the law of unintended consequences and what could happen. California ended up those trailer regulations went into effect early this year, but California has come out and said they will not enforce them. So sometimes even the best thoughts don't necessarily come to pass. So with that, I am going to turn it back to Kaylee, and we will open up the calls for discussion.
Yes, thank you, Frank, for all your insights. We'll now open up for informal discussion. So we encourage you to utilize your webcams so that it's a little bit more intimate. And then you can unmute when you have any questions, but again, we ask you to mute if you're not speaking. That way there aren't any background noises. So Frank, why don't we start out with how do the US environmental regs compare to other standards around the world?
Well, what we've seen in the past is that Europe tends to lead the way. They kind of set some pretty solid standards, and then other countries have followed. That certainly seems to be how things have happened. Our current standards are probably one step behind where Europe is. China is an interesting case. We do a China forecast report as well, and we're just in the process of publishing that quarterly update. And one of the things that China has done is trying to get into the same path as the European standards. They have some, given the China market, they have some interesting ways to enforce that. If they have older vehicles that don't meet the current standards, they just don't register them to be used. Think about that from a fleet standpoint. To all of a sudden you've got vehicles that you can't use anymore, but they're still operational. What do you do with them? You try to build an export. It's not like the vehicles are going to go away. They're attempting to build an export system and move them into third world countries. So sad to say, the pollution problem doesn't go away. It just gets repositioned.
Feel free to jump in if anyone else has any questions or comments, anything. Okay. So what out-of-the-box actions could be taken to improve overall emissions?
Well, I think I touched on one earlier that, it's overall emissions are a combination of efficiency and the emissions quality of the engine. So if there's a way to increase overall efficiency, so you're burning less fuel, or make the vehicle itself more efficient. For example, there's discussions. We've all seen what we term in the industry as the pup trailers, the 28-foot twin trailers going down the freeway. They probably have FedEx or UPS in many cases on the side of them, and there are other fleets that use those as well. Well, commercial vehicles operate under weight limits, and those are package carrying vehicles that the term is they cube out before they weigh out. They're actually transporting space. They're not necessarily transporting weight to its full capacity. There's proposal out there to change those to 33-foot trailers. So you end up with roughly 20% more capacity. So you've got think about it, you've got the same engine, you've got the same tractor, all of a sudden you've got 20% more capacity, technically 18%, but we'll use 20 for round figures. And so that could mean that you end up with 4 trucks on the road instead of 5 trucks on the road. And that's kind of an out of the box action to think about reducing emissions, because your fleet operations are more efficient.
Thank you, Frank. Anybody have any comments about anything, any questions regarding maybe your own fleet, what you could do, or ways that you can reduce your emissions? Do you want to touch on, how fleets can upgrade their equipment and help get additional cleaner vehicles on the road, in case anybody was curious?
Well, if you think about some of the opportunities with cleaner vehicles and the funds that are coming out of the Volkswagen settlement that are available, there's a lot of there's some significant grant money out there that can be had. From a national standpoint, there's a there's a tax called the federal excise tax. Now, most people are aware of it. They don't think about necessarily how much they're paying. Taxes tend to have a life of their own. Federal excise tax is now 103 years old. It went into effect because there was a need to finance World War One. It started out at 3%. It's now 12%. So every commercial vehicle that's out there is paying, and trailers as well. They're paying a 12% federal excise tax on their purchase. So if then there are some moves afoot to try to either cancel that tax or at least put it, have an abeyance on that tax for maybe through 2021 or 2022 because of the COVID impact on the market and trying to help, generate more sales. So if you think about it from a fleet standpoint, all of a sudden I'm not paying, we'll do the easy math. We're not paying $112. I'm paying $100. And if I have X amount of dollars to spend to reinvest in my fleet to get rid of older trucks and bring in newer trucks that are cleaner and also more efficient, that's a win-win for everyone. So it's again, it's a move that there's actually a strong Democratic proposal to make, to put federal excise tax in abeyance through 2021. It's certainly something that the National Trailer Dealers, the American Trucking Association, there's just a whole group of whole series of organizations that are out there to support that. And that is one way to get get some clean trucks out there and more efficient trucks. Again, that cleaner and more efficient is the double win.
Yes. Cleaner and more efficient. Definitely where we want to move to.
That's right.
So moving towards cleaner and more efficient, can you talk about the potential of ZEV commercial vehicles? What do you see moving forward for that?
Well, it's applicable segments. There are, I think I touched on that a little earlier. There are segments where the current technology, the technology is always improving, but the current technology has great applicability in segments where the vehicles are on a return to base type of process every day, where there's an easy way to set up the charging infrastructure. It's interesting on a pass car side. Yes, chargers are showing up in more and more places. Up here in Traverse City, which I'm just outside of, we have at a Meyer, we have a Tesla 10-spot charger station, which is kind of interesting because up until, I don't know, 6 months ago, you couldn't buy it. You couldn't buy a Tesla in the state of Michigan. They were not allowed to market because they don't have the dealer network, and so people were buying their Teslas down in Indiana, down in Ohio, and yeah, I see quite a few of them up here. Last time I went past Myers, there were 3 Teslas plugged in charging at the local Myers store. But again, that's the pass car side. What happens on the commercial vehicle side, the heavy truck side? That infrastructure is not there yet. When it gets there, sure, there's potential applicability. If you go to if you look at what could happen with heavy truck, Class 8 tractor and trailer, Nikola is looking to do hydrogen fuel cell, which would then charge the batteries on the vehicle. So again, a very clean technology, but now you need some infrastructure to distribute the hydrogen. Tesla is looking to do it on straight battery with chargers and a charger network, and there will definitely be applicability if you think about the routes that could be set up, the major routes across the country. heavy traffic lanes. So that's what's going to happen to get the infrastructure in for heavy truck. And we would anticipate that, and it's certainly happening in California, that some of this funding for coming from the Volkswagen settlement is helping build that infrastructure.
Yes, it is. It's a big help for our fleets and our different entities in Indiana, especially. 90% coming back to them, covering some of those DC fast and level 2 chargers. It's great.
I know our local utility just said they installed their first supercharger here in the area, our local co-op. So it's rolling out. It's just going to be slow.
Yes, yeah, we're moving. So I guess this will be our last question. What about the potential fuel efficiency regulations? Can you touch on that for commercial vehicles or trailers?
Well, yeah, the commercial trailer piece is kind of interesting. I think I mentioned I do the trailer report for the company, and on the 15th of November in the district appeals court of the federal appeals court in the District of Columbia, there will be oral arguments on the greenhouse gas regulations on trailers. EPA and NHTSA have both put regulations into place, and the court has stayed the regulations for EPA. They have not stayed the regulations for NHTSA. But again, there is proven technology that, yes, will improve the fuel efficiency, but it has to be used in the right place. The trailers that are crawling down an interstate won't get the benefit of aerodynamics. At that point, the aerodynamics are a penalty because they're extra weight on a vehicle. For the units that are at speed, I think there's a great opportunity here for the combination when autonomous operations come into effect. That gives the opportunity of off-hour operation of the vehicles, which takes a lot of the load off of the daily rush hour type of issues that we can have. And autonomous vehicles, think about a driver. A driver wants to get to point A to point B as quick as they can, running legally. Running legally may not, at 65 miles an hour, may not be the best efficiency. 55 would be, but I remember when the 55 mile an hour regulations were in effect for pass cars, it was a very boring drive. Autonomous vehicles don't get bored. They'll just run at 55 miles all day long. So, if you think about the combination of some of that technology, we can still move the freight. We can move it at an efficient speed, and potentially win from both a safety and a environmental side.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Frank. It's been great talking with you.
Good talking with you as well.
Yeah. I want to thank everyone for joining us today to learn more about changes in emission standards. And again, special thank you to our speaker, Frank. Greater Indiana will continue our Fuel Your Day series, and we're looking for partners for additional sessions like this one. So if you're interested in partnering on a series of sessions or a single session, please reach out to us at Greater Indiana Clean Cities. We have a few upcoming events you may also be interested in. On September 30th and October 1st, we are partnering with Forth for an EV workplace charging workshop. On October 5th and 6th, we are hosting NGVI CNG training sessions for technicians. And that's at a discounted rate for our Greater Indiana members. And the deadline to register for that is next Friday. So if you're interested, please check out our website. And then on October 6th, we're going under the hood with Lion Electric, Bluebird, and the ELPC for an electric school bus webinar. And then we also have 2 more Fuel Your Day sessions in partnership with Act Research. So join us October 14th to discuss the electrification of heavy duty trucks with Jim Mail. Principle of Industry Analysis at ACT Research. And then again on November 5th, we will be speaking with Drew Lang, Senior Advisor of Alternative Fuels at ACT Research, about natural gas vehicles. You can find out more information about our upcoming events on our website, greaterindiana.com. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone, and stay safe. Bye.